So the Oregon Education Department Anti-Bias Training has accused white people of having a thorough racist conditioning. All white people, mind you. All white people have a thorough racist conditioning, which seems pretty racist, but yeah. Oregon Department of Education Anti-Bias Training accused white people of having a thorough racist conditioning and claimed they need to be reconditioned. Re-education camps, my friend. There's nothing scary about that in any way. The training includes central topics in the critical race theory lens. For example, literature and training accused the U.S. of encompassing a white dominant culture. According to the training, quote, for white people living in North America, learning to be anti-racist is a re-education process. Could you make the Maoist doctrine a little less obvious? We must unlearn our thorough racist conditioning to re-educate and recondition ourselves as anti-racist, the literature stated. We are constantly tempted to detour off course by racist propaganda of our society and our own guilt and denial. See, if you deny the thing, it makes you all the more guilty. It's a classic Kafka trap. The very denial proves your guilt. In the face of society and our own resistance, sustaining the will to continue this journey takes a bold and stubborn effort. Well, I'll agree with you in one respect. You have to be pretty damn stubborn to agree to any of this doctrine or agree that it should be promulgated or taught. That is for sure. The literature also accuses white children of being trained to hold prejudice. Okay, quote, most of us first became aware of racial prejudice and injustice as children. As white infants, we were fed a pablum of racist propaganda. What the hell are they talking about? That early training was comprehensive and led little room for question, challenge, or doubt. What room for challenge or doubt, by the way, exists of the things you're trying to teach? You're trying to do a training. What room is there for question, challenge, or doubt of your training? Oh, there isn't any because your training is the best training. Oh, I see. Continuing on, quote, we resisted the lies, the deceit, and injustice of racism, but we did not have the skills to counter the poisonous message. Our conditioning filled us with fear, suspicion, and stereotypes that substituted for true knowing of people of color. We internalized our beliefs about people of color, ourselves, other white people, and about being white. Those internalized attitudes became actualized into racist behavior. And of course, to question or disbelieve any of these things just proves you racist all the more. One of the sessions in the seminar asked participants to enact microaggression scenarios over what might come in the workplace. Racial microaggressions are defined, according to the training, as commonplace verbal or behavioral indignities, whether intentional or unintentional, which communicate hostile, derogatory, or negative slights and insults. Okay. To deny one's personal racism or role in perpetration is a micro-invalidation. So see, you can't deny or question this training. We're supposed to deny, question the training we brought as infants, but to question or deny this training just proves you how bad a person you are. Okay. Another micro-invalidation include statements which assert that race plays a minor role in life under an umbrella entitled the myth of meritocracy. Yes, my friends, merit is a myth. The reason this channel does not have 10 million subscribers has absolutely nothing to do with any merit. It's only because of your internalized hatred. Challenge your hatred today. Denial or pretense a white person does not see color or race is another micro-invalidation example. This seems like pretty reprehensible stuff. And pretty racist stuff, to be quite honest. All right, so categories of and relationships among racial microaggressions. Oh joy, let's read the microaggressions chart. Racial microaggressions, commonplace verbal or behavioral indignities, whether intentional or unintentional, which constitute hostile, derogatory, or negative racial slights and insults. This includes such things as micro-insults, often unconscious, behavioral, verbal remarks, or comments that convey rudeness, insensitivity, and demean a person's racial heritage or identity. A microassault, often conscious, explicitly racial, derogatory, categorized primarily by violent verbal or nonverbal attack, meant to hurt the intended victims through name-calling, avoidance behavior, or purposeful discriminatory actions. Micro-invalidations, also unconscious, verbal comments or behaviors that exclude, negate, or nullify the psychological thought, feeling, experienced reality of a person of color. So if I disagree with a person of color as to their thoughts or feelings or their experienced reality, if I disagree that those things are true, it's a micro-invalidation. These all lead apparently to environmental microaggressions at the macro level. Racial assaults, insults, and invalidation, which are manifested on systemic and environmental levels. Ascription of intelligence. Assigning a degree of intelligence to a person of color based on their race. Who's doing that? Second-class citizen, treating as a lesser person or group. I'd like to take note here that this chart apparently is treating white people as lesser, so they're trying to change white people into second-class citizens, but that requires a level of self-awareness this chart doesn't have. Pathologizing cultural values or communication styles. Pathologizing, it's a pathogen. Okay. Notation or notion that the values and communication styles of people of color are abnormal. So if they're not communicating in a way I understand, then that is me pathologizing it. Okay. Assumption of criminal status. Presumed to be criminal, dangerous, or deviant based on race. Who's doing this? Alien in one's own land. Belief that visible racial ethnic minority criticisms are foreigners. Citizens are foreigners. Okay, so anyone who's a minority race must be a foreigner. Who is doing this? Color blindness, denial or pretense that a white person, capital W, by the way, capital W white person, does not see color or race. So if you deny to see color or race, then you're engaged in color blindness, which is a micro-invalidation. Myth of meritocracy, statements which assert that race plays a minor role in life success. I think that race plays a minor role in one's success. I think it has a lot to do with things other than race in America. Yes. Denial of individual racism, denial of personal racism, or one's role in its perpetration. So, me denying that I'm racist proves that I'm racist. It's a Kafka trap through and through. Fun and exciting. The Antibias Training, which was launched in 2020, focuses on understanding of institutionalized racist barriers that hinder elimination of racial achievement disparities in our schools. Supporting every learner requires addressing racial equality. We know there are longstanding inequalities in our systems that have led to gaps in outcomes for students of color. We emphasize culturally responsive professional learning, Oregon Department of Education staff that's reflective of all communities in our state. There's both intellectual and ethical basis for centering equality in professional learning and instruction materials. Attendees were also instructed on unpacking the invisible knapsack of white privilege. Wow. So apparently my white privilege has been stored in an invisible knapsack. I wonder if it's a pink invisible knapsack. No one's quite sure. The examples of white privilege include not being asked to speak for all the people of my racial group. I can be pretty sure that if I'm asked to talk to a person in charge, I'll be facing a person of my race. I can do well in challenging situations without being called a credit to my race. Heaven forbid that we say nice things about you, I guess. I can, if I wish, arrange to be in the company of people of my race most of the time. Why would you want to arrange to be in the company of people of your race? Isn't that racist? Isn't it purposefully trying to arrange to be in company of people of your race? Isn't that selecting people based on race, which is racist? How is that not racist? Why is that a good thing? I do not have to educate my children to be aware of systemic racism for their own daily physical protection. The training further defines racism as conscious or unconscious, intentional or unintentional, enactment of racial power grounded in racial prejudice by an individual or group against another individual or group perceived to have lower racial status. That is a very strange definition of racism. I thought racism was when you treated someone differently because of race. But apparently, that is no longer the cool, hip definition. It only applies to those of lower racial status. The training added that only people of color can be victims of racism because marginalized groups do not have institutional power. There's a difference between being hurt and being oppressed. Only people of color can be victims of racism because they don't have institutional power. But this entire training is trying to change that and trying to give them institutional power. So then does that mean that white people are now victims of racism because the very training, this very training itself is attempting to create institutionalized power and discriminating against them because of that? So then doesn't inherently this training itself establish the very racism that you're trying to find? I mean, that's just thinking things through and trying to apply logic all the way through, which I know is a mistake when it comes to this, but still. After the training, employees were asked whether they have more awareness of a white dominant culture. Apparently, elements of white dominant culture include the following. I'm more aware of the impact of race, racism, and white dominant culture on students in schools. I have greater understanding of the history of Oregon's relation to race and racism. Well, to be fair, Oregon's history when it comes to racism is somewhat dark in places. Oregon does have some very uncomfortable history when it comes to racism. So there is something there, but I don't know that really speaks to anyone in Oregon today. I feel more confident asking questions and addressing equality issues. I feel less confident personally because I feel like my questions are not acceptable because they challenge the narrative. So I feel less confident. I feel more comfortable in participating in conversations about race or racism. Again, I have to say I feel less comfortable because my questions and my thoughts apparently are unacceptable. I have a good idea of what my next steps are for supporting students and families. According to you, I am interested in doing more work on this topic in department meetings. The training's literature also spoke out against colorblindness. So colorblindness is bad. Colorblindness negates the cultural values, norms, expectations, and life experiences of people of color, and most importantly, their experience as target of racism. Even if an individual white person could ignore a person's color, society does not. But if lots of white people learn to ignore a person's color, then society does. Society is built of people. So if it's possible, which I believe it is, to get an individual to ignore a person's color, if you do that for enough people, you've inherently changed what society does. So that would be a good thing. By saying we're not different, that they don't see color, we're also saying we don't see my whiteness. I do not see my whiteness. This is true because I don't believe in the concept. This denies their experience of racism and our experience of privilege. The training further notes there is a long and painful history of racial bias in education. Students are ready for systems and institutions to change. Creating a just and equitable learning environment that embraces the history and experience of all of our learners is not good only for students, but also our communities and our shared future. We must work to ensure our schools are safe, welcoming, and embracing spaces to learn for every child. Yeah, but how about the white children, though? Because I'm not sure that they feel especially welcomed based on this. The Oregon school districts are doing fantastic work, apparently, on perpetuating the ideas that there's the white devil, which apparently is in no way racist. That's just super fun. That's just super fun and exciting. Thank you so much for being part of the Uncivil Law family. If you enjoyed this legal education content, please hit the subscribe button. It really helps the channel grow. We appreciate your continuing support. Until later, my friends, cheers and goodbye.